Alamonte on AM 560, The Answer.
Chicago's Morning Answer continues next in our AM 560 Weather Center. Skies should clear a little later on today, becoming windy, high 72. Clouds breezy, mild. Rain should return overnight, especially with a thunderstorm toward dawn in a low of 56. Tomorrow, cloudy, cooler, rain, maybe a thunderstorm in the morning, high 56. 48 at O'Hare. Next news coming up at 8. Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy continues next on AM 560, The Answer.
Listen to AM 560, The Answer, online at 560theanswer.com, on the AM 560 mobile app, and your Alexa-powered smart speaker, on TuneIn, iHeart, and radio.com. If you're looking for the latest news, insight into what it means, and the sharpest opinion, there's only one station in Chicago where you can turn, and it's this one. We're AM 560, The Answer.
Good morning, Dan and Amy. Ken Langone, the co-founder of Home Depot, billionaire, was on with Maria Bartiromo yesterday, and he addressed the Biden tax plan and this folly that it will only be those making more than $400,000 a year that will see an increase in taxes.
The only way a tax increase will generate revenues is to go after the middle class. That's where the numbers are. These people are being misled. There is not going to be enough money generated from the so-called rich to take care of all the needs. So that's step one. Step one is it is absolutely a fraud to suggest that all the money that's going to be needed is going to come from the rich and the super rich. The problem is when you go after the middle class, you begin to attack the backbone of the economy. And we will have a bad recession. We will have a very bad recession. At a point in time when our country can ill afford tax increases, this is the pitch. And the pitch is based politically on the notion we'll get only the rich people. You poor people, you middle-class people are going to be fine. It won't work, and they know it won't work. The tragedy is it won't. They'll find out it won't work when it's too late.
And Ken Langone is speaking nationally, of course, but the same argument could be just as easily applied to the graduated state income tax proposal that's on the ballot in Illinois on November 3rd. The same argument that Ken Langone makes in response to the Biden tax plan could be made against the graduated state income tax. You think you're going to be insulated, and it's not possible because the money they demand cannot be satisfied by what they propose. So ultimately what they propose is to get their snout under the tent, and then they come in and they take everybody's everything. And that's just what happens over and over and over again. But can they buffalo enough people? Can Biden buffalo enough people? Can Governor Jelly Belly and company buffalo enough people here? We'll see. We'll see. For more on this, we're pleased to be joined by the capitalist pig, since we're doing sort of animal metaphors. Capitalist pig, Jonathan Hoenig. That's a hedge fund, and he's also a Fox News contributor, and he's also the author of a new textbook of Americanism, The Politics of Ayn Rand. And Jonathan, thanks for being with us.
Dan, I mean, great to be with you. Although, I wake up a little more this morning hearing your intro, Dan, and beating my head against the wall a little bit. I mean, we are fighting the same economic battles decade after decade after decade, and we don't seem to learn from history. One of the most obvious that used to be at least common knowledge is that raising taxes decreases economic growth. Over and over again, we see more money coming out of the productive private sector, the area that gave us, Uber and Amazon and Facebook, all these amazing things, and going into the wasteful public sector, things that gave us the friggin' DMV and Obama's Obamacare website that crashed repeatedly. So it's that philosophy. But, Dan, from my perspective, they know it. The governor and Biden, they know that raising taxes on the wealthy or on anyone destroys economic wealth, but it's like a virtue signal for them. It's a way for them to say, oh, I know what's moral. I know what's right. It's hurting those evil rich people, those successful. They're the ones who screwed you, so we're going to make things right. So there's a whole morality underlying Biden's proposal that somehow, the so-called rich owe the rest of us, owe us their money. It's anti-American, and it's terrible economics
Well,
at the same time.
plus, actually, they need the cash. Even though it's going to be short-term cash for long-term pain, these are short-term thinkers. And even though it won't be the cash they are projecting it will be, they need whatever they can get to keep these Ponzi schemes running for just a little while longer, like to, their reelection, through their reelection. That's what you see. That's what we've seen in Chicago and Illinois for generations.
Yeah, and exactly. And look at the interest rates we're paying here in Illinois, Dan. I mean, as an investor and as a business owner, you start saying, why exactly am I buying this state's debt, or why am I even, contributing to the state's financial largesse by staying in this state? So, the long-term implications. It's very populist these days in politics and economics to do two things: to raise taxes on the rich and to so-called hurt China through tariffs. Both ultimately redound to hurt exactly those. And I think, Dan, in America, no one is lower or middle class. I think we're all high class as Americans, but it hurts, let's say, those lower income people.
Right.
When you so-called tax the rich, tax the wealthy, you destroy the jobs of the not so rich and wealthy. And that's exactly what Biden's proposing. That's exactly what Pritzker is proposing. And that's exactly the road that the state and this country are going down.
Well, with that graduated state income tax, which he is marketing as a fair tax, what are the chances that they're going to eventually tax your retirement?
Well, talk about Orwellian doublespeak, Amy, right? And it's great to be with you again this morning. And what's fair about treating people differently? What's fair about punishing someone simply because they've been more successful? But it's, if you think about, I don't want to be hyperbolic here, but what is, the old saying of socialism: from each according to his need, to each according to his need, from each according to his ability. So the idea is, hey, rich people have so-called got the money. Let's take them. And Amy, you're right. Let's take it. And Amy, you're right. It starts with the so-called, zillionaires and ultra billionaires, but it ultimately redounds to people's retirement funds, people's simple savings, and even those making, I don't know, let's say $200,000 a year, which is a lot. But when you think about it as a small business owner, by the time you pay your expenses, by the time the government takes its hooks out of that, you're not left with too much more in Illinois these days. So it always starts, Amy, with just the billionaires, just the zillionaires, and ultimately you get wealth destruction for all involved in the economy. And that's what we're seeing here in Illinois. Thanks, Pritzker.
It's so interesting because, 4/5 of Illinois residents are contemplating leaving. The number one reason is taxes. And they clearly don't think they're getting a good deal for what they pay in. And so on the spend side, which we never talk about, most people never talk about, a good piece by Jonathan Williams, who's the chief economist for the American Legislative Exchange Council. If Governor Pritzker were to trim his state's per resident spending to match Texas's per resident state spending, he would save taxpayers $22 billion a year.
Wow.
The tax increase is proposed to raise what, $1.5 billion, $2 billion? He would save $22 billion a year if he aligned Illinois' per resident spending with Texas. And in Texas, Jonathan, you'll take judicial notice. Please confirm this is true. They have roads, they have schools, they have police departments, they have fire departments, right?
Indeed.
Just as another example, if California Governor Gavin Newsom match California's per resident spending to that of New Hampshire's, he would save California $65 billion a year. $22 billion for Illinois. We have a $40 billion round numbers general revenue fund budget annually. That's pretty material. And there's just no discussion on what you're getting for what the state is spending. And if you aligned it to what other states are actually doing that are outperforming Illinois, according to their own residents in terms of their happiness with where they live and the state government they have, you could solve so many of these problems, these fiscal problems, or be on the path to solving them in places like Illinois and California.
Yeah, but you're right, Dan. But the philosophy, the ideology is bringing us in. People believe, even many on the so-called right, that government spending creates wealth. That we need government to pass out checks, to hire people, to invest in these businesses, to keep people employed, to pay their pensions, etc. Otherwise, as you said, who's gonna build the roads? Who's gonna, in reality, we've always seen on a macro level, on a micro level, the most free economy is the most prosperous economy for the so-called rich, but for everyone else as well. And you're right. They never talk about cutting spending. They only talk about raising taxes. And the net result is exactly what you're describing. More and more of those productive entrepreneurs, sure, the Ken Griffins, the zillionaires, they're going to go to Florida. But also, you know, the everyday guy who's just got a plumbing business.
Billionaires, the Ken Griffins, the Jonathan Hoenigs, the billionaires.
They're taking off as well. And that's, as you said, they're killing the goose that lays that golden egg we all enjoy in America and in Illinois in particular through these higher taxes. And that's what Pritzker's doing with the fair tax.
All right, so let me ask you a market question.
Get your pen and paper out.
I think a lot of people. Well, I think a lot of people want to know this too. You know that there's sort of competing beliefs as to whether or not the rent-seeking Wall Street banks have built in a Biden victory to their market outlook. And I wonder if you think Biden wins on November 3rd. Will you see a market tank? Will you see, as some have suggested, the Dow halving over the next quarter, or as long as the silly money is flowing from the Fed, then that will buoy the market, and we can continue to pretend that that we can live this way in perpetuity.
You know, again, I've done this professionally for over 20 years. My fund has beaten the S&P over that period, so I've had some success, and I find now to be the most difficult time in my career to try to analyze what's happening in the market. I mean, there's so much that's going on in the economy, but also so much that's going on with government, and the elections is just one of those elements. Look, everyone who made the prediction that the market would take under Trump immediately, they were wrong. And I think some of those dire predictions about a market taking under Biden are wrong as well, Dan. Markets tend not to correct like that, tend not to collapse like that. The thing that worries me a lot more than a Biden victory, to be honest, is the spending that goes along with it. I mean, they're talking about $2 trillion worth of so-called stimulus here, guys. And keep in mind what happened the last time the government passed that big stimulus bill in 2008. The market fell about 40% after the stimulus was passed in 2008. So that's what, and of course, Dan, both the Republicans and Democrats want to spend more and more money in a so-called stimulus bill. So that's what's worrying me. I'm worried about spending under Biden, but I'm worried about spending under Trump as well, because they're both doing it in D.C. right now.
How did the markets react yesterday? Because, they're kind of in a vacillation period, wondering whether or not the stimulus deal is going to be passed before November 3rd.
Down about 100 points yesterday. Going to open flat this morning, Amy, and it's all eyes on Tesla. Tesla makes a lot of money. A lot of it comes from selling environmental credits. Put that in your green tea pipe and smoke it. So keep an eye on Tesla. It's going to be up about 10% on the opening bell. But where we go from here, guys, it's anyone's guess.
Tesla. So it's another government finance business. Tesla, everything we talk about, you have to include the government. The government is the silent or not so silent partner. All right. So what I hear you saying is push all my money into Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies. Is that what you're saying? Oh yeah.
How's that cryptocurrency going?
It's actually an interesting story breaking late yesterday. PayPal now, I mean, Dan, we laugh, but Bitcoin is almost now up to $14,000 a coin.
Yeah. And
it got a little bit of legitimization this week because PayPal now will allow customers to buy and sell cryptocurrencies, to buy and sell Bitcoin. So, what once was a kind of a obscure gamers type of dark web activities becoming more and more mainstream, you now can get your Bitcoin right there on PayPal.
All right. Bitcoin is not just for human traffickers anymore. Good to know. Jonathan Hoenig, founding member of the Capitalist Pig Hedge Fund, Fox News contributor of the book, A New Textbook of Americanism, The Politics of Ayn Rand. Jonathan, thanks for joining us.
Great to be with you guys. Have a good morning.
Thanks, you too. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
This is the morning show more Chicago radio listeners are choosing. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Sometimes when it rains, it pours right into your basement. This is Gus from Chicagoland Waterproofing. My mission is to identify why your home is taking on water and fix it. I want you to sleep at night during a rainstorm and not worry about your basement filling up with water.
Gus, it's Bernice Mitke. I just want to tell you what a blessed relief it was when I went into the basement to not see a puddle anywhere. So I thank you, thank you, thank you. Bye-bye.
From simple sump pumps to complex storm drainage and cracked foundation solutions, Chicagoland Waterproofing's work comes with a lifetime warranty. Plus, a fully licensed plumber is always on staff. Stop debris or water from entering your basement. Failing window wells